Welcome, dear students. Today I am going to deliberate on one of the most serious topic in South Asia, that is Balochistan. Balochistan is Pakistan's westernmost province, sharing international borders with Iran's Restu Balochistan of Sistan province as well as with several southern provinces of Afghanistan such as Nimroz, Helmand, Kandahar, Zabul and Paktika. Balochistan is the largest of Pakistan's 4 provinces. It covers 43% of its land area, but has only around 6% of its population. It is the least developed province, but rich in energy and mineral resources, meeting more than 40% of Pakistan's energy needs through its gas and coal reserves and accounting for 36% of its total gas production. Large energy reserves remain untapped. However, 46.6% of households have no electricity. Consistent degradation of the water supply and absence of storage systems such as small dams have turned much of Balochistan with its predominantly rural population into an arid wasteland. According to the Karachi-based Social Policy and Development Center, poverty levels are twice that of Punjab, Pakistan's largest and most prosperous province. Urban unemployment is 12.5% compared to the countrywide average of 9.7%, and half of the population lives below the poverty line. It is ethnically diverse and is home to many religious minorities, including Sikhs, Hindus, Parsis, and a diverse array of Sunni sectarian adherents as well as Shia. However, Balochistan is the country's least populated and thus least densely populated province, accounting for a mere 5% of the country's burgeoning population. Balochistan is a bellwether to Pakistan. It is the most fragile province in contemporary Pakistan. The Pakistani state has chosen to govern Balochistan by striking alliances with willing tribal and political elites in return for access to the state's resources of power and patronage. The breakdown of these elite pacts invariably culminates in violent uprisings against the state, which in turn are suppressed by the military and foster a new cycle of violence followed by another elite pact. These ongoing cycles define Balochistan's fragility trap. In this lecture, we will discuss about Balochistan's political development, such as the period of accession to Pakistan and rise of insurgency, the political economy of the province and current trends from China-Pakistan economic corridor to the changing nature of Baloch insurgency. Let us discuss first political development. Balochistan, a federating unit of Pakistan, had remained a semi-autonomous state and a loose confederacy in pre-partition of the subcontinent. However, after the inception of Pakistan as an independent country in 1947, Balochistan has become one of the federating units of the Pakistan. Mir Ahmad Yar Khan, the Khan of Kalat, declared Balochistan's independence on August 12, 1947. The Balochistan parliament rejected merging with Pakistan on several occasions between December 14, 1947 and February 25, 1948. The Khan of Kalat agreed to the accession of Balochistan into Pakistan on March 27, 1948. Government troops entered Balochistan on April 15, 1948, and on October 6, 1958, the Khan of Kalat and several hundred Balochi political leaders were arrested on October 6, 1958 and declared martial law subsequently on October 7, 1958. Nawab Nawroz Khan led a rebellion against the government in October 1958. Baloch tribesmen led by Sher Muhammad Mari rebelled against the government in the tribal areas of Mangal, Mari and Bukti between 1963 and 1969. The Baloch Students Organization (BSO) was established in support of Baloch independence in 1967. Government troops and Baloch rebels clashed in 1967 and 1968, and Baloch rebels were largely suppressed in 1969. Elections were held in 1970 and 1971, and the National Awami Party won 8 out of 20 seats in the Balochistan Legislative Assembly. The government announced the formation of the province of Balochistan on July 1, 1971. The then Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto appointed Mir Gaus Bakhsh Bizanjoa of the National Awami Party as Governor of Balochistan in April 1972. Prime Minister Bhutto dismissed Governor Bizanjoa and Provincial Assembly of Balochistan on February 12, 1973 and appointed Sardar Akbar Khan Bukti as governor. Some 1,000 individuals were killed during the crisis that followed after the dismissal of Provincial Assembly. The military was able to restore a semblance of centralized control by deploying some 80,000 troops and killing thousands of militants. But military action also claimed hundreds of civilian lives, including women and children. The military operation heightened Baloch political awareness and alienation, particularly among the youth. While the military was perceived as a brutal occupying force, Baloch leaders such as Nawab Khair Bakhsh Mari, Sardar Ataullah Mengal and Gaus Bakhsh Bizanjoa became heroes. The insurgency ended only as the result of a negotiated settlement by then Army Chief General Zia ul Haq, who had ousted Bhutto in a military coup in 1977. Opting to end an unwinnable war, General Zia ul Haq withdrew the army and released thousands of Baloch leaders and activists, but also resorted to divide and rule policies. Then, as now, the military opted to empower Pashtun Islamist parties in Balochistan with two goals in mind. First, to counter the Baloch nationalists and to promote the military's agenda in neighboring Afghanistan, then engulfed in a US-led Pakistani-supported anti-Soviet jihad. Thousands of Deobandi madrasas run by the Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam and supported by the Pakistani state supplied recruits for the Afghan jihad. And after the Soviet withdrawal from the Mujahideen parties during Afghanistan's bloody civil war, these madrasas provided the leadership and foot soldiers for the Taliban in the 1990s and still contribute recruits to the Taliban cause. The conflict in Balochistan, as in the past, is rooted in Islamabad's unwillingness to cede political and economic autonomy to the resource-rich but most neglected and underdeveloped of Pakistan's 4 federal provinces. Again, as in the past, the attempt to crush the insurgency is feeding Baloch alienation. As the military has expanded its operations, the militants too have escalated their attacks. The insurgency has spread almost province-wide with exception of the northern Pashtun belt, with frequent attacks on gas, pipelines, electricity grids and railway tracks, as well as government installations and personnel in almost all Baloch majority areas, from Chagai bordering on Iran and Gwadar on Balochistan's southern coast to Hub, the industrial city that borders Sindh province. With the insurgency also spilling over into Sindh and Punjab, which have significant Baloch population, the conflict has affected 3 of Pakistan's 4 federal units. Although negotiations with the Baloch leadership could have helped diffuse tensions before they reached current dimensions, the military believed in only one solution, that is to enforce the writ of the state by force. It was this reasoning that led to the 26 August 2006 military operation that killed Jamhuri Watan Party leader Nawab Akbar Khan Bukti. But with his death, Bukti has become a symbol of Baloch resistance, a martyr who sacrificed his life for the Baloch cause. Many more young and angry Baloch not just in Balochistan, but also in the Sindh, and even attacks have occurred in Punjab. And as the ranks of the militants grow, the military also expand its presence and the scale of its operations, fueling in turn more alienation and anger. Now let us discuss about political economy of the province. In the absence of democratic institutions, Baloch anger over central control and exploitation of the province's economic resources and its development schemes with little or no input from the province has reached new heights. Abundance of natural resources make Balochistan the richest province of Pakistan. However, its per capita income is lowest among the provinces in Pakistan. A very large proportion of Balochistan land, almost 90%, is barren due to shortage of irrigation system. Consequently, famine and economic problems are unavoidable. Being the largest province in terms of area, is mostly dry, facing acute water scarcity. Probably the most pressing rift between the province and centre has revolved around the distribution of resources and the revenues collected from natural reserves of Balochistan. Disputes over oil exploration and gas reserves have persisted since Balochistan's accession to Pakistan. Government strives to attract foreign companies for oil exploration, but these companies directly or indirectly expose concerns of Balochistan to rest of the world. Thus, this also becomes part of the problem as they have to protect their interests. While the broader demand for provincial autonomy continue to inform the ethno-nationalist discourse, it is clear that the present phase of the struggle has emerged in response to the military initiatives to establish greater control over the resources and territory of Balochistan. The establishment of territorial control has also facilitated the expanding interests of multinational capital, which has substantially increased its presence in Pakistan during the tenure of the General Musharraf's regime. Most importantly, Chinese companies were given almost exclusive contracts to undertake construction of the Gwadar port. The first phase of investment totaling $248 million, of which the Chinese provided $198 million. Conceived as a regional hub for transit and transshipment of goods for Afghanistan, Central Asia and the Middle East, the port has been a priority for the Pakistan. The emphasis is to make Gwadar a focus for investment, encouraging the establishment of export-oriented petrochemical and other industries. It is also expected to bolster Pakistan's strategic defenses by providing an alternative port to Karachi, which was blocked by the Indian Navy in previous wars. Gwadar port is run by the federal government with no provincial control. For instance, Islamabad did not consult the provincial government when it handed over the development of the second phase of the port to the private sector. It will also retain the revenues generated from the port once it becomes fully functional under China-Pakistan economic corridor. Because the Gwadar project provides little in terms of employment and development to the locals, there is immense resistance. Gwadar still has only one intermediate college and not a single technical school. No steps have been taken to improve the poor health facilities or to even provide access to safe drinking water to Gwadar and other parts of Makran division. Now let us talk about CPEC and Balochistan. The CPEC involves investment of some $60 billion. The corridor connects Gwadar in the southwestern province of Balochistan to China's Xinjiang region through the mountainous terrain of Gilgit-Baltistan. CPEC is a flagship project of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, a geopolitical ambition to develop trade and infrastructure with over 60 economies across Eurasia, Africa and beyond. For Islamabad, CPEC brings the hope of not only economic dividends, but also potentially a geopolitical reconfiguration. However, it is not clear that those who stay in Gwadar will reap the benefits of Chinese investment. At the start of the project, Pakistan transferred leasing rights for Gwadar port to the China Overseas Port Holding Company, sealing a deal that grants China 91% of the port generated profits and Islamabad just gets 9%. While denying Balochistan's provincial government any revenue, with such lopsided terms, China is under minimal pressure to ensure local prosperity. Anti-Chinese sentiment is rising in step with suspicions of Beijing's intentions. Some Pakistani security analysts see Chinese development plans as mask for broader geopolitical ambitions. In Gwadar, they perceive Beijing as less interested in developing a transport link to Xinjiang or a commercial way station to the Arabian Sea and Persian Gulf than eventually transforming the port into a military or naval base, another in a string of installations dotted across the Indian Ocean. That affords Beijing the strategic initiatives vis-a-vis regional rival India. Regardless of China's true intentions, the net result for locals is the same. Economic marginalization is stirring local decisions, which could lead to significant security risks. Balochistan's insurgency has long rested on popular demands for greater political and economic autonomy. The failure to provide Gwadar the benefits of CPEC development is heightening hostility towards Islamabad and Beijing and affording Baloch insurgents a chance to expand their outreach and recruit disgruntled locals. Since 2017, Baloch militants have already killed scores of Pakistanis employed on CPEC projects. Instead of addressing the causes of this dissent, Pakistani authorities have opted to respond through crackdowns of anti-CPEC protests and overbearing security presence and harassment and intimidation of local residents. With animosity towards Islamabad heightening, Baloch insurgent groups such as the Baloch Liberation Army have condemned CPEC projects as another attempt by the state to exploit Balochistan's resources, while giving little back to the province and its citizens. According to Kaiser Bengali, a prominent economist and former senior advisor to the Balochistan government, anywhere the Chinese are working will be perceived as a CPEC project and could hence be subject to attack. Baloch militants have killed scores of Pakistani workers employed on CPEC projects, including 3 laborers in Turbat district working for the military-run Frontier Works organization on the Gwadar-Quetta highway in May 2017 and 10 construction workers in Gwadar earlier the same month, also working for CPEC road projects. Though the Baloch insurgents are not strong enough to counter an overwhelming military presence, these attacks are a message to the Chinese that the state will not always be able to protect them. On August 2018, a suicide bomber targeted a bus carrying Chinese engineers in Dalbad in Balochistan, wounding 5 people including 3 Chinese nationals. In November 2018, a Baloch insurgent group claimed responsibility for an attack on the Chinese consulate in southern Karachi city, killing 4 people. In May 2019, separatists attacked the Pearl Continental Hotel in Gwadar, killing 5 people and injuring 6 persons. In 2019, a luxury hotel Gwadar was attacked by a gunman from a Baloch separatist group. In June 2020, armed separatists raided the Pakistan Stock Exchange, where 3 Chinese companies at the time owned 40% of the stakes. The target of the Baloch nationalists is the Pakistani state, which they see as an oppressor. According to Hussain Haqqani, the South Asia director at the Hudson Institute, who was also Pakistan's ambassador to the US. They target China because they think that might get them Western and Indian support, and also because they see China backing as important for Pakistan's security establishment. Rafiullah Kakar, a political analyst from Quetta, said the nationalists are demanding freedom from the Pakistani state. They claim the Pakistani government and China are responsible for the abject poverty and oppression. The Baloch national movement is marching gradually but inexorably towards a violent secessionist path. The Pakistani state's authoritarian practices during overt dictatorships and militarized democracies turned Baloch nationalism into a pernicious and strident force. The return of democracy following the ouster of Musharraf in 2008 brought no tangible difference in the modus operandi of the deep state in Balochistan. The situation only deteriorated amid a policy that saw a dramatic rise in cases. Unlike previous insurgencies, which remained confined to a few districts and were driven primarily by demands for provincial autonomy, the present insurgency displays pervasive violence and deepening nationalist fervor. This insurgency marks both the emergence of a middle class sympathetic to the nationalist cause and the territorial expansion of Baloch nationalism. What was initially a localized movement limited to the regions dominated by Mari, Mengal and Bugti population groups was diffused to the other non-tribal areas like the southern Makran belt. Not only did nationalist activity extend beyond the traditional strongholds of dominant Baloch tribes, its support base also grew, both geographically and numerically, with people from other tribes either aligning with the movement or joining it as active members. This educated class is more articulate in their assertions of self-determination, which has won them a much wider support base, including nationalist sardars whose positions they appropriated. As one commentator writes, the likes of Brahmuda Bugti and Harbiyar Mari, scions of the extremely popular sardars Akbar Bugti and Ataullah Mengal, might be in the vanguard of the movement or at least poster boys of the separatists. The ballast for Baloch nationalism is coming from the middle class. The emergent educated cadre is represented by the rise of popular leaders like Dr. Abdul Hai Baloch, who heads the National Party representing the non-tribal urban middle class in the Makran division in the southwest near Gawadar. Dr. Allah Nazar Baloch, who like Hai is a medical doctor, is currently among the most popular non-tribal nationalist leaders. However, what separates Hai from Allah Nazar is the latter's unequivocal support for an independent Balochistan. While Hai is part of the mainstream nationalist politics that seeks provincial autonomy, Nazar is an ardent proponent of guerrilla warfare. Earlier, a chairman of a radical student outfit, the Baloch Students Organization Azad, he later founded the Balochistan Liberation Front to organize an armed struggle. Nazar's hardline politics has found resonance among many educated Baloch disillusioned by the repressive policies of the state. Other nationalist leaders from middle class backgrounds like Wahid Kamar Baloch and Abdul Nabi Bangalzai are also emerging as influential actors in the nationalist landscape of the province. The change in demographic structure of Balochistan due to a couple of reasons. First, the influx of Afghan refugees and internally displaced people from the tribal areas into Balochistan. Second, as per the 2017 census results, the Baloch population has shrunk from 61% to 55.6% in the last 19 years in 21 districts. Therefore, the anti-Pakistan or pro-independent voices are only a minority, although a sizable one seems to favor independence. This is an indication that the political space for negotiations, however small it may be, still exists, but it does not guarantee that negotiations will ever start. That a majority of the population supports Balochistan's future within the Pakistani Federation also indicates at a deeper level that Pakistan's unity is less fractious than commonly thought. This and the failure of the security forces to end the Balochistan conflict by the sword should suggest to Islamabad that Pakistan's diversity will have to be managed politically, not repressed or suppressed by military means. The choice is ultimately between some form of popular participation or complete fragmentation. If a solution is to be found, it will have to be political. Conclusion. In this lecture, we covered the political history of Balochistan from controversial accession to rise of insurgency, which in its initial part was confined to ownership of natural resources, respecting human rights and dignity to autonomy. Now, the change in insurgency, which is not confined to the Sardars and is now led by middle class people, is turning out to be a full-blown insurgency that has put question mark on the future of CPAC, which passes through the restive province of Balochistan. Without providing ownership to the CPAC projects and natural resources, any negotiation with Baloch leadership will not produce any result. In order to address Baloch issue, Pakistan needs to revisit its state policy, which has been more or less confined to militarily suppress the voices emerging from the province. An economic package sans political reforms would not produce any result. A political problem is always addressed through a political initiative. With this, we are signing off our today's lecture. Hope you have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching it.